Okay, so we'll try this one more time because internet's been crappy. I guess 2 days in a row now. So we'll
Yeah, we'll
see
get it
how it
together.
works. But I wanted to get so now we're live now. So let me get so we were looking at this a minute ago, and then do I have it? I have it right here. We had this. So I found this map yesterday.
The countries that are backing up the sanctions against
This
Russia.
is this is the extent according to this. Here's the Twitter. It says green color is countries who impose sanctions on Russia according to real Libyan. What's the source? I don't know what the source is, but it probably core. I mean, this will be easy to fact check.
Are you screen sharing now? Because I don't see it. I just see your
Oh, I
profile
did. I got
picture.
to screen share again. So screen share. Boom. All right, now you should see it. Maybe it's the screen sharing that's screwing everything up. We'll see. Could be. So why is it doing that?
Right? We've
Oh, I
got
gotta put.
Australia, the European Union, Japan, and the United States with
You
Canada.
got
I didn't see Mexico,
Canada. You got
North America.
United States. You got most of Europe, except for a couple countries here. I know Serbia is super pro Russia. Greenland is like, nope.
Right?
Greenland's like, I'm not
Yeah,
doing it.
Greenland, Switzerland, Norway, Sweden. A lot of those nations, even if they're
Switzerland is
NATO
doing
allies, yeah, they're not so
Switzerland.
neutral these days.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Switzerland. Finland is never like has a history with Russia. Let's just put it that way.
but what about as
Uh,
far as the dependency on agricultural commodities? I think they were one of the nations, right? Finland. They would depend on Russian sphere
I'm not
control,
sure
like
about. I'm not sure about.
Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Russia, and Belarus.
I'm not
As
sure
far,
about Finland, but I heard a lot of countries in Africa get Ukraine's exports.
yeah, so
Somalia
they're
is a
going to
big
start
one.
buying in rubles. Is that what you think is going to happen? I mean,
No,
Russia
what
doesn't have any use for dollars, right, on the open exchange markets or on.
what do you mean? Does I mean no? They got sanctioned to
They've been
hell.
sanctioned, right? Yeah, that's
So
what I'm saying. So
why should they continue to use dollars?
they can't spend them anywhere.
The fact of the matter is they don't have to use dollars because somebody somewhere in the world, and there's a lot of people in the world, all this gray represents countries that will buy commodities from Russia if they need them. And the only ones that
Hmm.
won't are going to be these in the green. So, what Europe and the United States and Canada and Australia is a big commodity producer too. So to them, it's not as big of a deal. But what all these countries don't understand, they don't get, is that they're just not that important anymore. That's really the fact of the matter. We're just not that important anymore. You have India with 1 billion people. You have China with about 1.5 billion people. You have Africa, including South Africa. It's blocked here. They're not.
Yeah,
They're
the
not.
developing world.
The South Africa, which is typically friendly to Europe and kind of Eurocentric. Well, not so much lately, but it has been
Yeah.
for most of its
Well, they're
history.
part of BRICS, so they're definitely trade friendly with Russia, India, China, and Brazil,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Eastern Bloc.
So we just looked at Japan's sanctions, and we found
Right.
out that Japan's sanctions leave a little bit to be desired. They joined with G7. So G7 was the one that did the SWIFT sanctions on certain Russian central banks, and I think they've gotten more and more
Yeah,
draconian. But Japan on its own, the only thing they've done, they haven't stopped importing oil, I don't think. The only thing Japan has done has been to freeze some assets of some Russian officials, oligarchs, banks, who knows what bank and how
yeah,
much, and other institutions. I guarantee you, Japan's already said they have to continue importing
right.
gas and oil. So they're
So that's why I was saying early on, some of these
so
sanctions make
so
sense for
so
them to sign on
so
early on.
this addition of Japan, this is kind of gratuitous. Let's just put it that way, because their
Okay.
sanctions are minimal. So I'm sure some of these, like Hungary, I think is in here. Yep. I believe or is that Hungary right there? Maybe that's Hungary. I can't see. But Hungary stayed
They're
mostly
more.
out of it. So a lot of these
Yeah, these days.
countries,
Yeah.
a lot of these countries that have done sanctions on Russia, they're not really, you know, they can call anything they want sanctions. Taking a billionaire's yacht, okay, they'll go on the media and say these are crippling
Right.
sanctions. But then when
But
you
that can
read
be
into
forgiven.
it,
That can be, returned. Like if freezing reserves from the central bank or something, that can seem like theft at first, but that can be redeemed. That can be,
no,
undone.
no, freezing from a central, no, free, okay,
Not
taking
from a
as
central bank, from your own central bank, the reserves, the foreign reserves held by like Russia in that case,
that's a big deal. That's a
like we had
big
done.
deal. That's a big deal, actually. It's taking so a lot of times because I remember I looked at a timeline of sanctions going back to 2014, and literally 90% of the so-called sanctions were various countries in Europe or the United States freezing the assets of some rich dude or a couple
During
rich
the first,
dudes
I mean, during the Crimean
or
Russia
blocking visas, taking visas away
intervention.
from Russian officials, like just attacking individuals, not actually, doing anything to
Okay.
trade. So that's usually what the sanctions are. And the media will always go on TV and at the behest of the government, and they'll say, um, "Oh, these are going to be crippling sanctions," but it's literally they took a visa away from a fucking Russian diplomat. Okay,
Yeah.
it's like
Well, always,
what?
always hyperbolic, so it's hard to
Mm.
say too. And then people demand blood, and then they're demanding, and they
Say that
I
again,
don't know.
because
I just
you
see.
broke up. No, you broke up a lot there. I paused it for
Okay.
a second. Say that one more time.
I'm just saying the escalation. I'm talking about people in the United States because, the media use this hyperbolic language, like you were saying with sanctions, how they make it seem like it's way more of a big deal than it actually is, seizing assets of these
Well,
oligarchs. And it's like,
that's
oh, bold
usually
moves by the Biden administration. And then
yeah.
people start gradually,
You
demanding blood and wanting to see more and more retribution. They become more tribal. So we're seeing like a lot of Americans don't really understand a lot of the implications. They just want to like condemn and punish, and they think that we have the ability to throw our weight around like this one. Like you said, we're becoming less and less important on the world stage, especially as a currency that is not backed by a commodity anymore. So like if
mm-hmm,
we're losing the petrodollar,
exactly.
then I don't see what our currency is even backed on. We're talking a lot of
It's not backed
bull
on
talk.
anything.
We're looking like a paper dragon, really.
We definitely are. United States is a declining empire, but I've said that many times. But the sanctions this time. So most of the time in the last, how many years has it been since 2014? 8 years since Crimean episode and the Maidan coup. Since then, they've always come out with sanctions, and most sanctions were basically taking visas away from diplomats, stealing some rich oligarchs, which they always call the Russian billionaires oligarchs, but it's basically a billionaire's boat or house or a flat in Central Park or wherever, and
Right.
they go on New
They
York
make a
Times
public
or
spectacle
Washington.
of it.
Yeah, they make a public spectacle, but this time's a bit different. And the main things that are different
Yeah.
is the biggest thing with the most implications is actually what you mentioned a minute ago, which was stealing Russia's reserves in the United
Yeah.
States. That was a
That's
big
sovereign
deal.
wealth. Those sovereign wealth funds. That's not that's just the reserves, the sovereign reserves of a
Yeah,
independent nation.
that erodes trust in the overall system,
Hmm.
is what that
And the
does.
video, the
And,
guy that was talking about Bitcoin that you showed me at the beginning, when he tied this in with the truckers protests, um, what I'm hearing is that people are losing trust in the financial systems because if they feel like they can have
Mm-hmm.
their assets stolen at any time, that's
Mm-hmm.
breaking down
Same
trust
thing with the
as
truckers.
well,
Yep.
too. Like if
Mm-hmm.
the United States can seize assets like in Libya or Venezuela, steal the gold, take money in Afghanistan from the central banks, take gold away. These
Mm-hmm.
nations are starting to see it as the United States defaulting on our debts. They don't. The sanctions just seems like a big, rigmarole. This whole charade to try to justify what type of intervention. Like you never know, we could be going after Saudi Arabia next. If the
That's what
petrodollar
Saudi Arabia
relationship
probably thinks
relationship
too.
starts, yeah, they've got to be thinking that
Well,
too. So
consider
if you,
this.
yeah, because we're not just protecting their reserves like with the 1974 going onto the petrodollar, how this all started, that we're going to back up Saudi Arabia, the House of Saud, through military invention to prop up their, what would you call that, a monopoly as far as their oil producing abilities. We prop them up, they prop up our currency. So if that is no longer a relationship that we can maintain and they want to kick us out of the arrangement, the mafia, United States, of course, what are we going to do? We're going to go after them like extortion, like from the mob. You don't want our protection, then we're going to show you that what it's like to be on the other side of the stick.
Well, we already started the process of ruining the relationship with Saudi Arabia by making the Iran deal in 2000, which I actually what
Which
was it? That
Iran deal?
was
The one recently? No,
two,
I was thinking of
that was
Biden's trying to go over.
2000. No, the one with Obama. So Saudi Arabia wasn't happy with that to begin with. I mean, really, Saudi Arabia didn't like Obama too much, and then Obama started making. Obama didn't want to take the political fallout for supporting Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen starting way back in 2014. Then Trump comes in.
Yeah, he
Saudi
did kind of
Arabia,
take
of
it
course,
on.
Trump kisses Saudi Arabia's ass like more as much as any of the Bushes ever did. And then comes Biden, and Biden's just like campaigning on ending the war in Yemen or stopping the U.S. support in Yemen,
Yeah,
and
and
so it was
sanctions
really
are
the
murder also. We kill people through those sanctions on behalf of Saudi Arabia in Yemen also.
so we really
But those are the what do you call inconvenient victims or something, unworthy victims
what
in the media, as opposed to the Ukrainians, the Western Ukrainians,
unfashionable
unfashionable or
unfashionable
unworthy
victims
victims.
unfashionable victims. But so
I butchered a quote
South
again. There is a Chomsky quote I had to butcher every stream. I
was
butcher
that a
something quote.
Chomsky quote? I don't
I
know if
guess
that.
so. That was the concept that he coined. I guess so. I don't know.
So what I'm getting to something. Bear with me. So what I'm getting at is Saudi Arabia, when all this sanction stuff starts, Saudi Arabia is like, wait a minute, they're doing all this stuff to Russia, but they're also seem to be moving away from us. They're talking to Iran. They're telling us we can't bomb civilians and kill people in Yemen with impunity and starve them to death. And we don't really like that. What if they start sanctioning us because we want to murder people
Right.
in
Oh, this is when it started
in
in Saudi
Yemen?
Arabia.
That Saudi
Okay.
Arabia must be thinking, the people must be thinking, look, this may get in the way of our quest to
Right.
wipe the Houthis off the face of the planet. like
Yeah.
which
So
I
these
don't.
negotiations going on right now in Saudi Arabia with the Chinese and the Russians, they're negotiating whether or not to use the renminbi or the rubles for the domination for barrels of oil. One of the biggest concerns has to be security. If anybody can like protect them from the United States, as opposed to filling the void left behind from the United
Well,
States
they
with a
the United
petrodollar relationship.
yeah the United it's the I don't it see the way I see it, the United States. Saudi Arabia isn't leaving the United States. The United States started leaving Saudi Arabia years ago. So Saudi Arabia is now looking at the situation like, okay, maybe we should start doing more business with China, start accommodating China. So
Yeah.
that's where really the reason you see so much gray on this map, look at South America. Literally one country, Suriname. The rest of South America, Mexico, Central America, I think not one country in Central
We've done so
America.
many of these countries dirty in South
Yes,
America, especially
exactly. We've
where's the
been really
trust
at we're
there?
been. It's no wonder. It's no
I don't
wonder
think
that
they
none
like
of
the
them.
petrodollar system,
Of
really.
course not. They've
I
all
think
been
it's
screwed
down
over
quality.
by either the petrodollar system or just screwed over by the United States generally. So it's no wonder that they don't want to get behind these sanctions. And look at Africa. And guess who they've been screwed over by? Mostly by people in Europe. And they're feeling the
Mhm.
same way. Like, I'm not going along with this. We don't like you anyway. So the rest of the world must be sitting back and watching and saying, God, I hope these people really just skewer themselves on their own sword, is what they
Yeah,
must be
it's
thinking.
awful, and I don't even know if they have a plan. I
No, they
mean,
have no plan. Everything to them, I'm convinced that there is no plan. Usually there isn't in politics. I mean,
but what do
in
they expect for this casino economy to keep on going if our currency is not even backed by a commodity, definitely not backed by any hard assets, or it just seems
I
like
don't think they see that far. All they see is to the next election, and
because
they
they can
think
go
that
on
this will
with the
help.
schemes, right? The Federal Reserve can print money, and they can force the banks or oblige the banks to buy treasury bonds to prop this up in this,
They can't really
triangular
oblige
arrangement. And
they can't really oblige the banks to buy treasury bonds, and I think some banks, because they have a close relationship with the
right,
government, may try to help out a little bit. You got your J.P. Morgans. J.P. Morgan's been uh, very, very heavy into interfering with the price of gold through manipulation of the paper gold markets. And maybe
to keep it
that's
artificially low
yeah,
right
because
now.
the last thing the government wants is, and JP Morgan, these big banks, because they're so heavily subsidized by the
Yeah.
government through bailouts, so they got an interest in keeping the government going, right?
Hmm.
Because look, JP Morgan's like, wow, if the government goes under, then we're next because there's
Yeah.
going to be nobody to bail us out
Right. And with
when
all
all's
this
said and done.
liquidity, they keep moving it around into into commodities and then into hard assets and everything. And then
Who does?
I don't well, the relationship with between the Fed and the commercial banks, and when they're supposed to be extending a line of credit to Main Street, but instead they're like, I guess with
Well, they're not. The Fed's not supposed to. The Fed was always there to be a lender of last resort for the large commercial banks. That was the original
yeah,
reason. They were there for that, because the reason the Federal Reserve was started was because in the last 10 years, and
90%.
first the last 10 years of the 19th century, first 10 years of the 20th century, you had a lot of bank runs, and so basically they was very disruptive,
To
to people's
manipulate interest
lives.
rates, right? To keep things to
Well,
prop things
not
up.
really. Really, it was, yeah, monetary stability, which is interest rates. But the reason they set the interest rates was because they were a lender of last resort to the banks. So that's where the Fed's fund rate. I think it was late. I'm not sure 100% on this, but I think it was they didn't really start using interest rates to manipulate shit until much later. I think that
Right, with more
originally.
power over fractional reserve lending, right? They had more tools in their toolbox, more of their skill
Mm,
set to be able
Now
to
you
create
you
these
sound like
synthetic instruments.
you sound like one of those guys when you don't say tools and
Yeah, I throw
toolbox.
things around like, oh, this is
uh,
a synthetic financial
have
instrument right
you
here.
must?
We're
Oh my
little
goodness.
wizards of money.
Well,
We're
they
gonna
only
call
have
this a cute little term, and then we're gonna put
they
this
only
over
have a
here,
couple
and
tools.
don't look behind the curtain.
The only tools they have is Fed funds rate. They have there's a few. They have Fed funds rate, which is the interest rate that they set. So when they say they're raising interest rates, they're only raising their interest rate. That's the interest rate that other
Yeah,
banks pay to borrow from them. So JP Morgan wants to borrow, let's say, $500 billion. Then they go to the Federal Reserve and say, hey, print up $500 billion, or maybe give me $500 billion. But then the other tool
and then they buy
they would
bonds,
have
treasury bonds.
is they
Um,
could do the quantitative easing, right? And that's kind
right,
of
more
like,
money printing.
which then,
So that's like low. That's low interest rates, and that causes assets to skyrocket, right? When the interest rates are really low and the market's flooded with liquidity.
hmm, Yeah, well, assets skyrocket when there's a lot of liquidity because there's a lot of cash in the system. So basically, it's inflation, but it's just inflation in stocks. So, when they do the quantitative easing, they're printing money, but most of the money that they're printing, it's not going to the consumer. So you
It's
don't
going to
see
buy
a lot of.
treasury bonds.
Hmm?
It's going to buy treasury bonds primarily, right?
They buy treasury bonds, right? Which companies use to. Well, they buy treasury bonds, and that keeps the entire bond market, the interest rates on all the bonds,
Yeah.
low because
Everything else
there's.
would sink if treasury bonds were to default, right?
Oh yeah,
And there'd be a crash across the board.
yeah, all bonds would go under. There'd be a credit crisis. Nobody would be able to borrow money, and that means that basic business, the businesses won't even be able to function on a basic level. Everything would
Yeah.
stop. If there was a credit freeze, everything would stop. There'd probably be starvation. It'd probably be a really bad situation because even grocery stores wouldn't be able to pay truck drivers to deliver, food
I
to the
know.
grocery stores. It would be
Yeah. Good
bad.
luck. A similar
Yeah,
outcome.
so
What if there's a run on the banks also? Like on a global scale, what if other nations start ditching their reserves, getting out of dollars, saying, "Who's going to buy my reserves? I need to buy rubles or yuan to
they'll do it
purchase Russian
slowly.
goods and commodities." Like,
They'll do it slowly over time. They won't do it quickly.
you think the
So
Federal Reserve is going to come up with some type of magic, to kick the can down the road again?
all they can do is kick the can down the road, but eventually
Okay.
you come to the end of the road, and they're at the end of the road, and they
And,
keep
and
saying,
I also heard that they can't raise interest rates right now because then they won't be able to pay their own bills, right? This is part of the model?
mm, "Let
You
me."
can tell I've been listening to Gonzalo. He's got me all fired up about this.
Well, the problem
Right?
with
His Minsky
raising
trap or something. What do you call it?
interest rates, I'll show you. It has nothing to do with not so much to do with the government's debt. It has to do with it's right here. It has to do with consumer debt and corporate debt. So we go here, and this is an
Maybe a
alarming
little
number.
agency debt in there too.
So this is the total corporate debt in millions. So you actually are seeing trillions. So we're at right now 11, basically $11.5 trillion of corporate debt outstanding in the system. So what that means is companies, the reason they have so much debt is because they're reliant on debt, because they have to, like we have the whole situation with zombie companies where like 10 to 20% of US companies use debt to stay afloat. If
Yeah.
interest
So
rates
they're
went up,
basically in government receivership at that point.
they're dependent on debt. I don't know what you mean by government receivership exactly.
Like in the zombie economy, like you said, they were propped up by the economy. They're not making a return, but they're operating at a loss, right? Continuing to
Yeah,
function
yeah,
because
they
they're
wouldn't. They're
essential.
not. They're yeah. They wouldn't. They're operating. They need the debt to continue operating. Yeah, so they don't make enough money to really cover their expenses. Plus, the interest has gotten out of hand for a lot of these companies. So they spend so much money paying back interest that it really cuts into their revenues. So that's the real problem. So we're in a situation. It should be evident by just looking at this. We're in a situation where. The economy is dependent upon debt. Just 10 years ago, we were at the height of the financial crisis, in the middle of the great financial crisis, we were at 6.6 or so trillion dollars in corporate debt. Now we're almost double that. We're at 11.6. So we've gone off the charts in corporate debt. They
Would
have
we be able to manage this at all if we were not the world reserve currency? I
no,
mean, that's
no,
that's the only
no.
benefit why this is allowed to happen, right?
Yeah, because then the dollar would. Well, I don't know. That's kind of a complicated question right there. I
Yeah,
don't know
I
for
didn't
sure.
phrase it right either, but you get
Well,
me.
no, we'll be able to. No, it makes sense. Would we be able to manage The debt, actually, if the dollar crashed and became, worthless essentially, that means all the debt would be worthless. So it actually would be a good thing for people that hold debt, which maybe a lot of people speculate. So think of it this way. If you buy a house and you spend $500,000 on a house in 2000, okay? Or no, in 2020, let's say in 2020, you bought a house for $500,000.
I would love to
But
think it's at the height of the bubble at that point, but I don't know.
well, let's say that
Just for hypothetical.
let's
Okay.
say the value of the house remains the same. So let's say in 2030, inflation has cut the value of the dollar in half by 50%. So then that $500,000 in 2020 money is actually $250,000. The value, the amount of the debt, even though it's going to still be $500,000 by 2030, you're going to be getting paid a lot more because inflation is so high. So that debt, that $500,000 isn't going to be as high to you as it was in 2020. In 2030, the debt would have seemed like a lot less than in 2020. You understand?
And in 2010, you would have been put on an adjustable mortgage rate too, and it would have all caught up to you, and you'd still be fucked, just like everybody else.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that, or before 2010, that would have been like 2005. But what I'm saying is, when inflation is high, then that's good for people who are holders of who owe people money, because when inflation is high, that means that wages go up too as well, not as fast as inflation, but they still go
Right.
up. So that debt, you're going to have more money relative to that debt in the long run. So your debt's actually going, so that amount, so basically the debt decreases because of the inflation.
But can you have
So
that
actually,
without the wild speculation and everything too?
what's that?
With there's high, I mean, if there's what do you say? The interest rates are lower, and that's what we were talking about, right? Where wages are higher. Also, wouldn't that create like more speculation and that would cause housing bubbles? That would be the reason why people can take out astronomical loans and everything.
No, if interest rates are low, then that allows people to do what we're seeing here, borrow a bunch of money, and yeah, they'll speculate on it. And they'll, but when the government, see, the thing is the Federal Reserve only trickles down to the financial system. It doesn't get into so much into the real economy. What made the inflation go up, what gave us the inflation that we're experiencing now, was not really so much the quantitative easing, and they're saying it is printing money, but in a different way. What really gave us the inflation we're experiencing now is all those stimulus checks from the first two that Trump, from the first two that Trump gave us to the third one that Biden, and then all of the social programs and all of the entitlements that the government gave away related to COVID. It was really just an excuse to buy votes, but it just got out of control. The rent moratorium, that's putting money in people's pockets. That's the government basically putting money that gives people more disposable income.
Property,
the more disposable income they have, then they're going to spend it. You have more money chasing after fewer goods, because at the same time, they shut down the economy so that we weren't producing as much, and that shipping and all of the supply chain got disrupted. So you have more money in the economy. You have shipping getting fucked up. You have factories not producing shit. Everything. So we created the ultimate inflation catastrophe, mainly because of lockdowns.
Money into real assets. Everybody was buying up property too, and that caused the price to skyrocket as well.
People were buying property. Now the reason housing prices go,
the wealthy.
Well, wait. The housing prices go up. That has more to do directly with the Fed. Because the Fed, by keeping interest rates low, that has a direct impact on mortgage interest rates. And having a mortgage interest rate 3%, which is what we had like a few years ago, to 5% now, is a big difference in your monthly payment.
Yeah, big difference in qualifying for like a 30-year mortgage.
Well, because you're qualified. You're qualified based on your monthly payment. So they look at your income and they look at how much you want to spend per month, and they're going to say, "Hey,
You
you
can
only make
handle it.
2,000." Yeah, they could say you can handle it. It's a $500 mortgage, which doesn't exist, and you make $2,000 a month. Okay, we think you can handle it. They have a figure. It's like, oh, make sure that they don't spend more than 25% or something on their monthly, but on their mortgage. But on top of that, the Fed was buying mortgage-backed securities, so they were printing money. They were buying treasuries, like you said a minute ago, but they
Yeah.
were also doing something they have never done before prior
Treating the
to, I
housing
think,
market like a commodities market.
they were buying the Fed was buying mortgage-backed securities,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Just bonds.
basically a treasury bond for the real estate industry. So that had an even more direct impact on
On the
the
housing
mortgage
market,
rates. The housing market got out of control. It encourages people to build more, add more inventory, and the housing
right?
prices just shot up. So that
And
the
venture
housing.
capitalists to go ahead and buy up entire neighborhoods, trying to hide, trying to put their money into some assets that, they can count on, something that's secure, where they could buy a property and then rent
Mhm.
it out, have property management, run it. That's like one of the biggest crises we're seeing right now, where people can't afford, like locals are being kicked out of their areas, the neighborhood, as property increases and increases. They could rent a home from somebody that's, BlackRock, like a private pension fund manager that can buy up
Mhm.
entire, towns, cities.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And the
But
venture
why are they
capital.
doing this?
Well,
Because
you
they're
got to think
putting
of
the
it
money
this way,
into something
huh?
secure, right? Why are they
What's
doing
that?
this? Because it's like they're trying to protect their assets, their investments, into something that's soundproof in an
They're just
uncertain
chasing.
economy.
They're just chasing yield. They just are fine. They're gonna. All investment banks are gonna go to the places with the highest yield that seems the
Yeah,
most safe of a investment. So,
right.
if housing's going up 20-30% per year or whatever it was doing, I'm thinking like 15% per year, then BlackRock's going to be like, well, why are we going to put money in the S&P 500, which is only
Mhm.
going up? Actually, that went up a lot too. So, they're saying, oh, they were saying this. BlackRock was buying rental properties, and they said, yeah, we're going to buy these rental properties because that's going to be a stream of income coming in over time. So they look at
Mhm.
it like that. That's why they
Yeah,
were doing that.
exactly.
But
And the thing is,
BlackRock,
the government's going to go ahead and give them a more favorable relationship, because they're going to be managing government funds and bonds and buying treasury bonds also,
of course,
with this liquidity given to them too, that they get to
they have a
delegate. And that's to
direct,
prop our whole system up. And
they're
they're
able to
screwing
get
regular Americans out of their own houses. So,
BlackRock is able to get money basically directly from the Federal Reserve through the
mhm.
repo system and different ways. So the big commercial banks are the ones that borrow money directly from the Fed. They
Mhm.
pay the overnight lending rate or whatever the different rates. But BlackRock and also all these banks can also do repurchase agreements or reverse repurchase agreements. But that sort of service is only available to the biggest financial institutions, not to you and me. So when the
Their
Fed does these,
political donor class also.
yeah, basically, yeah. And yeah, basically it's the political donor class more or less. So the Fed but what caused the consumer price, and so we've had quantitative easing. See, here's what people don't realize. And it's hard to really pin down inflation. Inflation's a really complicated price inflation is a really complicated issue, but people were saying, well, printing money doesn't cause inflation because we were printing money since 2008, 2009. We started quantitative easing, and then we didn't see much inflation until just recently. Why is that? It's because because the money we were printing wasn't being put into the right place. See, if you print money
Yeah.
and you just give it to the banks and you just give it to the major financial
Right.
institutions,
It's not
you
stimulating the
see
economy.
it is stimulating the
But is
financial
an upward
economy.
transfer of wealth
I'll
towards
tell
the.
you in a minute. Let me complete this thought. I'll tell you
Okay.
exactly what it
Okay.
does. So, when you give the money to the big financial institutions, this will be brief. I'm sorry, but I just
No,
before I
no, no,
forget,
no.
because he might sidetrack me.
Information.
Um,
Yeah.
um, if you give the money to the banks and the big financial institutions, what are they going to spend their money on? Answer that question. What are the big financial institutions gonna? They're not going to go to Walmart and buy fucking food, are they? With
Right.
that
No, they're
money,
gonna
what are
buy
they going to
some
do with
type
it?
of assets, investments.
Yeah. So then you start seeing the asset price inflation. And what did we see from, like, basically starting, it's not in a straight line, but over the next 10 years, you saw steady asset price inflation through all of these quantitative easing events, right? But you didn't see really high inflation. Inflation stayed around 1.5 to 2% or whatever,
Yeah.
very low. As a matter of fact, the Fed was complaining there's not enough inflation. And the reason there wasn't enough inflation is because that money that was being printed wasn't going to Main Street. It was just going to Wall Street. But then what happens? Then you have COVID. And then it was one handout from the government after
Yeah.
another.
And at
You
that time, they
increased.
started getting really tricky with their metrics and with
Mhm.
their measurements for determining, what a basket of goods is and how to measure inflation.
That
You know,
started
they
way back in the 80s.
right. Okay, but well,
Hmm.
with the money supply, the M1 money stock, didn't that change?
But the
Um,
M1 money supply
something.
is. See, M1 money supply. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good. I thought you broke up. We had actually so far the internet's been decent. So M1 money. So look what we. So M1 money supply is the money. It's not really money in circulation. It's just money in bank reserves type of deal.
Right.
So
Which are
that
mostly
money.
held offshore, right?
No, that's only if you're a corrupt.
Foreign reserve markets open.
No, that's only if you're a corrupt official. Most of this money is held in the big commercial banks. If you're a corrupt official, then yeah, you're going to put your money in Panama or somewhere. But what I'm saying is M1 is not really relevant. M2 is a little bit better. M2 is measuring something else. But what you really want to see is money velocity. But here's what we have. Here's what caused the inflation. I'm going to show you right now. So when we started all of these little stimulus programs, whether it was PPP loans, that went directly to the economy, and they became grants. People didn't have to pay them back, so businesses got free money that they didn't have to pay back. That's going directly.
Or they were
These are
not
for
accountable
small.
for.
This is for small businesses, not to large banks and large financial institutions. So these are people that are getting free money from the government for simply not firing their employees while they have the business shut down. So it's like these businesses were producing nothing, but at the same time, they were getting all of the money they would normally get while producing nothing. So you have less goods and services in the economy, and you have more of this right here. This is disposable personal income. Look at disposable personal income at the tail end of the COVID lockdowns. Look how it jumps up. That's money. This is money that the average consumer has at their disposal.
Leftover
That
from
money
paying
is
bills, right?
going to paying bills, and plus they're getting extra money from the government, stimulus checks. They don't have to pay their rent. Student loan forgiveness, which is still going on. What was another good
In
one?
some
There's so
states, it
many
was
of them.
soft communism or communism light.
Extended unemployment benefits, PPP
Yeah,
loans. Think of how much money if you, especially if you were a real piece of shit, like a lot of people are, you could probably work the system. I knew people
yeah,
that were not working, they were getting more. I knew a lot of people, actually. I never got a break. I knew a lot of people
right.
that were not working that made more money not working because of the extended
Yeah.
unemployment than if
I'm
they
not an
worked.
opportunist like that. My only
Mm-hmm.
hope is that I'm left alone. My libertarian ass who just wants to be left the
Mm-hmm.
fuck alone, who in any type of environment, whatever's going on in the world, I'll find a way to pay my bills and
Yeah.
get by, maintain
Hmm.
my cost of living without
Pretty
asking
much
for a
everyone
handout.
does.
I pride
Everyone
myself
does.
on that. Yeah. So as
Hmm.
long as I'm not going to get fucked for not crossing my T's and dotting my I's there, and they can focus on the people that abuse PPP loans and exploited, extracted from the system,
Well,
using fraud.
that's not what the
That'll keep the
government.
IRS busy. I hope. I hope they're not going to just politically selectively enforce. It's like, oh, you're a good little Democrat voter, so we're going to go ahead and
No, they're going to go after the
overlook
low
this.
hanging. They're going to always go after the low hanging fruit. That's what they always do. So just don't be the low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
That's it.
Sure.
So, but you have all this disposable income that goes to Walmart, that goes to all of the
Yeah.
goods and services that we
Box
buy
stores
every
that were
day.
open. How shitty was that though? To incentivize small businesses to shut down production and become decadent and just let the big box stores and major chains make money hand over fist. I mean,
Hmm.
largest upward transfer of wealth in human history.
Yep,
And people are like, I can get used to this lifestyle. This is great.
makes you
And
wonder. What makes you
decadence.
wonder why? Yeah, I hear you. No, I'm
Yeah.
with you. It makes
A
you
lot
wonder
of
why the meat.
Americans drive me nuts, even more when they're just sitting there armchair quarterbacks. They absolutely drive me fucking nuts because not just that they don't understand how things work or take the time to want to understand,
No,
but
they
it's
don't care.
arrogance against other people in the world. We're going to
But
cause so much starvation and death as a result of just like condemning and browbeating and shaming Russians and saying that we want regime change, and if we don't get our way, then so be it. Let Europe suffer. Let all these people. If we can blame it on Russia and we'll say it's your fault for all this death, like people, I don't think they have a clue, and they think that we're better. They don't realize this kind of stuff can happen here. We're not superior to history. We can look like Weimar Germany. It's not like
that's
this
how.
little fairy tale that can last forever.
Well, you have to ask yourself why this keeps happening over and over to every civilization. Why do you think that is?
Oh,
Because
so many reasons.
well, the main
Massive
reason is
bureaucratic state, administrative, parasitic, you know, growth and just exploitation and people becoming decadent, hard
but
times.
it comes down to that Americans are not unique in the world. There's nothing special about
Yes,
Americans.
that's what
Americans
I was
make the
saying.
same are making the same mistakes that the Romans made, the Byzantines made, the
Hmm.
as well, I wouldn't say Aztecs and Incas; they kind of got wrecked. But Romans,
Yeah,
The Chinese made several times the same mistake. China has a very interesting because you see Chinese civilization rise and fall
yeah,
several times, and it's usually a pattern to how the end comes about.
generations.
It's a cyclical almost thing because
Hmm.
China never got really interrupted by major political
Western
turmoil
powers.
from the outside. They never got
Hmm.
interrupted in their civilization from external influences. So China was able to develop on its own. And what do you see? You see these civilizations rise, the
Rise
dynasties, they
and
get more
implode.
centralized, they get more powerful, then they get corrupt, and then they
Yeah,
start falling apart. And then it always happens in a
that
cycle. They even
centralized authority. Yeah, that's exactly what it leads to:
right.
corruption and
So,
collapse.
but all this money, I wanted to finish this thought before I forget if I haven't already. So, you have all of this extra disposable income that goes to Walmart, but at the same time, as we remember, Walmart had fewer and fewer goods available because there was less being produced. You had shipping get destroyed. I was actually just watching something today about the shipping situation, and it had the shipping situation
Like
is a
global
lot more.
supply chains.
Yeah, it's a lot more complicated than just like the unions apparently the ports are not working right. I don't know if it has to do with the unions or the government. I'm not sure. Probably a mixture of both. But look here. This was the last stimulus check that went out, the Biden stimulus in March of 2020. The Biden celebration. Let's celebrate that Biden is our president now. A stimulus check. Look at that disposable income go up like crazy because people were actually also working at the same time that most of the benefits were still going. Like people started going back to work. That now
Right. So it's a
inflation
payday.
inflation starts right about here. I remember about January of 2021, we start to see, in maybe even December, it started to creep up a little bit, but it was January. And see, that inflation that we started to experience in January was actually a result of this event right here. So it lagged almost a year. So the inflation we're experiencing now goes back to, maybe we're past this part, but inflation lags. It takes a while
Yeah.
for the money that gets into the real economy to work its way to the system
Wow, I
and
bet
cause
they if
prices
they
to
really thought
increase.
they could pump it hard enough too, they could make it all the way to the midterms, huh?
That's what they would do it if they could. Yeah. I mean,
Right,
Trump
they'll
was
take the
the worst
strategic
one.
reserves. Oh my God, our oil reserves too. That's for emergency. They'll do it for political maneuvering.
Hmm.
Also,
That's why I stay away from doing trading in oil, because there's always the politicians come. They never let
yeah, some
oil see.
manipulation.
Yeah, they never let the market do its work, and there's always manipulation. So if you're a trader and you like macroeconomics, just stay away
Yeah, you
from
can follow
oil.
trends, and then all of a sudden, the
Hmm.
politicians are doing something, and then some others had inside knowledge. They knew how
Hmm.
speculators were going to react, and you know, yeah, you get fucked,
So
you get wrecked.
at the same time of our that we had um, this high disposable income, we had very low productivity. So, like I was just to reiterate, so you had less goods and you had the shipping crisis, which a lot of people are, which I was, like I said, I was just watching this and I'm kind of repeating myself now, but I was just watching this and they were saying, it's not necessarily because of the lockdown. So I have to look more into
Yeah,
that.
yeah, there was
But
politics. The Teamsters or something, the like you said, the people that control the docks, they were on strike, and there were demands not
something,
being met, and they were
there's that, and there's also some other things going on related
in
to actually the
California and
business.
New York City. That was going on a lot too. I read
Right,
about it
right.
over there.
Related to the business cycle. Also, there's stuff going on, but so you have a double whammy. So it's still oversimplifying to say that inflation, consumer price inflation,
Yeah,
is more money chasing after fewer goods. That's still oversimplifying, because inflation can be caused by other things like speculation. So if you have investors who are getting a lot of money, let's say because the Fed is, allowing them to borrow money, now they can go and speculate on commodities, which jacks up the price of
yeah,
commodities, and that goes into
that's
consumer
where
price
we're at.
inflation.
This is where we are right
Yeah,
now.
we have like three or four different forces at work here, more than that. But so it's a complicated issue. So if anyone ever tells you inflation is this or inflation is that, Peter
Yeah,
Schiff always likes to say that, the real definition of inflation, the textbook definition, is just the expansion of the money supply, which is true. It's just the expansion of the money supply. When we talk about inflation, we're actually talking about consumer price inflation, which is prices rising. So that's inflation. And as you said
right.
earlier,
Yeah, there's so
uh,
many metrics to hide this from the people.
yeah, the Fed, well, they started changing the rules back in 1981, because in the late 70s and early 80s, a lot of
Politicians
politicians
got
were
axed.
losing their jobs. So,
Yeah.
and
Oh
let's
yeah,
never
rather
forget.
than do anything meaningful, right? Let's just,
No, it's
hide
what's
this
the
fact from the
easiest?
public view, or roll it out
Well,
incrementally,
look at it
slowly,
this
and
way.
people are boiling frogs in a pot.
If you have to go to the store, would you go out of your way or would you go directly to the store? Would you like go a mile to the west, then go a mile to the north, then go a mile to the east, or would you just walk, you know,
Yeah,
one
like the
mile
crow
instead of
flies.
3 miles? So yeah, so the politicians do everything the easiest way, and the easiest way is, hey, let's get them to change the rules on how they calculate
The
inflation, so people
lazy,
don't realize them.
yeah, the mother of invention is lazy and convenient, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, everything's like that. They work smarter. They don't work harder. So why would they, if they were able to manipulate? And the thing about it is when they made the Federal Reserve, it was all there was a bit. You got to go back and read some of these debates that they were having, and there were people back in 1913, 1910, all these years before when they were debating the Federal Reserve, and they called all this shit out. Even Andrew Jackson in the 1850s called out exactly what is going on, which is the Federal Reserve, and even Thomas
Private
Jefferson.
central bank.
It would lead to corruption.
Yeah,
It
there
would
were so
lead
many
to
prophetic quotes on that.
oh yeah,
The
they knew it
issuance
way
of the
back
money
then.
supply. Yeah,
That's why it was a
saw
very
that in Britain.
contentious issue. Like for the first half, yeah, for the first half of the 1800s, like a central bank, whether to have a central bank or not, was
Yeah.
one of the most contentious issues in
Oh
American
yeah,
politics
they had
from
seen
about
it with the
1800 to
Rothschilds. They had
1850.
seen it. They had seen it in Europe
Yeah.
with
Hmm.
after the fall of Napoleon. The
Mm.
Rothschilds, buying up economies for pennies on the dollar, manipulating currencies, and
Oh, you
starting
gotta
wars and everything.
Philip.
Having a nation
Tell me
by the
how.
balls.
Be more specific. I want to hear more about that. I don't know much about that.
Okay. I don't know. I'm just saying the Rothschild banks that had, I guess it was a Nathan Rothschild. I heard this a while ago that one of the ones, I think the family came to power after there was the Napoleonic War. I think of Waterloo. One of these Rothschilds, they were on horseback and they had gone back to Britain with news about Napoleon's defeat, but instead of reporting on what had happened, what they had seen, they spread false information about Napoleon
Mm.
winning or something, causing I don't
A
know,
ba-
runs on the bank or something for war bonds. Who knows what? I don't know the
yeah.
interest that we had at the time,
But
but
the point is, they lied about what
they lied
happened to
about it and
manipulate the
then bought
market.
the news,
Hmm.
and then bought up the
They
economy
bought
and
the
protected
news and
themselves.
sold the fact. Buy
Yeah.
the news, sell the fact.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a good saying. I love that saying. Buy the news, sell the fact.
Right. So
Um,
yeah, when the markets found an equilibrium, they found themselves in a very leveraged position against most of the economy
so
extracting their wealth. I mean leveraging their wealth for assets, hard assets.
so back to I do want to round this off because we're getting close to 50 minutes. Let's try and keep it around an hour and 5 minutes, something like that. But back to Russia, we did a nice little talk about economic matters and all that, and back to the sanctions because it's like what Alexander Mercurius says. He says it's an economic war of attrition. And the thing about it is it's not the United States versus Russia, or it's not the United States and Europe versus Russia.
United
It's
States versus the United States,
it's the
right? Is that what you're
United
gonna say?
No, I'm going to say the United States and Europe. Japan's only in this half-heartedly. United States and Europe. I don't know what Australia's doing with their sanctions. Probably not so much because they're closely connected with China. So it's United States and Europe fighting a war, and Suriname over here. Suriname decided to join in the fun versus
Hey, thanks for coming in.
yeah against the world. It's the United States and Europe fighting an economic war of attrition versus the world. Because look at all this buying power here in South America.
I can't see. You're gonna have to explain it to me.
Oh, I
I'm
have
not
to.
on
I
screen
have.
share.
I'm not
But
sharing it
no,
anymore.
you do a good job
I'll
explaining
share.
it though. So I
Well,
have
yeah,
these.
but I'm gonna share it just to show it to you. So, but I'm gonna turn off. Maybe I'm gonna turn off. Stop sharing. I'm just gonna show the picture and not do sound. Maybe
Okay,
that
because
will
we don't
help
want
the
to mess up
bandwidth.
our audio.
Yeah, because we're
So
on a
close.
roll, right? Yeah, our internet's on a roll. So look at it this way. Okay, Russia and China are the two main producers here in this picture. They're the main producers of the world. And then you have the Middle East that has a lot of oil. You have Africa that has some natural resources, but they're so politically unstable up until recently. Most of these countries are too politically unstable to be
Yeah.
reliable commodities producers. But what they do is all of these companies. See, this represents all of this and all of this here. Well, basically
The
all
gray
of this
represents.
buying power. That is buying
Yeah.
power. That is a ton of buying power. And all of these economies are growing like crazy. You got to think about it. And so they don't need the United States and Europe.
I
I mean, the United
know. That's the thing. That's what
they
we're
don't need.
learning. Oh my
And then
God, Russia
we
doesn't
even
need
forgot
dollars
we
as
even
much as
forgot
we need
about the
their
most buy.
commodities.
We even forgot about
India,
the
China.
India. Well, India's a big chunk of buying power. Africa, tons of potential buying power and some actual buying power. South America is well developed. There's a ton of buying power there right now, and it's only
Yeah.
going to grow more. That's buying power. Okay. They don't need the United States. They don't
I
need
know,
Europe.
that's so
They just
scary. Our
don't.
dollar is not backed by anything. What happens when there's a bank run? And
Well, they'll
like
call a
we're
bank
saying,
holiday. They'll call a bank holiday. The first thing they'll do, so they'll make it so you can't get your
you
money
can't
out of
take
the
your
bank.
money out. Right. Yeah.
That's why you shouldn't keep all your money in the bank. That's why crypto is going to be
Yeah, that's
essential.
because if it happens, it's gonna happen fast.
That's why crypto is going to save a lot of people's butts. So that's why I'm getting more like the guy was saying we were watching a minute ago before we started this. His name's Darius on Real Vision. He was saying that all of this stuff between the petrodollar dying, between Canada seizing the money from the bank, from the truckers,
Yeah.
between the United
Trust
States.
is broken. Bonds are broken.
Yeah.
So
And see
social
that,
cohesive bonds as a global,
well, the trust,
intricate global economy is
they
based on
listen,
trust
it's fiat
or fear.
currency. Fiat means trust. That's what it actually means.
I was saying trust or fear, based on trust or fear, but
Yeah, but what fiat means, the fiat in fiat currency means trust. It means it comes
not like
from
the car. Not like the car that means that's an acronym for "Fix It Again, Tony." That's what Audrey likes the little fiat. Sorry, I
Fiat?
digress.
No,
She's
there
like,
you
"What
go.
does
That's a good one.
fiat mean?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
Fiat.
I digress."
That's funny.
But as a
But fiat is trust. Fiat currency literally means trust currency. Its value is based on the trust of that currency. So once you
yeah,
interfere with that trust, it's literally not worth anything. It's only worth as much as people trust it.
yeah. You mean
So
somebody
think
like
about that.
Gaddafi getting accosted with a sword while we laugh and brag about it? And the moment that he tried to get off the petrodollar and set up a central reserve
Mm-hmm.
bank based on gold, and
And
you know
Saddam
that was a
Hussein did
fun.
too. Saddam
Yeah,
Hussein did the same thing.
yeah, that doesn't help. That's a lot of these nations that we meddled with in South America. They're thinking like, fuck the petrodollar. Let's see. Russia has showed the world that they are a force to be reckoned with. They are based on commodities, and you know they produce half of the world's agricultural commodities. Like I was saying, between Belarus,
They're the largest
Kazakhstan, and
commodities
Ukraine.
producer in the world. And
Yeah,
I'm telling you right now, as we said before, we've really screwed over South America. South America's been waiting for a moment like this. Okay, and Africa too, because they got screwed over mostly by Europe, a little bit by the United States. Both of these continents, they've been waiting for a moment like this. When the United States gets in a situation where they need their help and they're just relishing this opportunity to
yeah,
say fuck off. They're just
yeah. Like in
relishing the
Venezuela just
opportunity.
now.
Exactly. Like, how the hell are you going to approach Venezuela after we spent the last 15 years starving the population?
Yeah, under your sanctions and with the color revolutions, the regime change, and all the operations running over there, and the demands. Yeah, and then we just
And
say, oh, we're gonna
starving,
forgive all this if you'll
and
sell us
most
some oil.
importantly, starving the population. Like, starving
Yeah.
people. Like, do you think, and then
Yeah,
we're going to
sanctions
approach
is just a euphemism. Sanctions is really just a euphemism for like the wholesale starvation, cutting off essential
Yeah.
resources to civilian populations.
And, you know, here's the thing about sanctions. Here's another thing. I want, maybe you can tell me, when have sanctions ever achieved their stated objective?
You know,
Have
they
they
didn't,
ever?
they didn't with Iran. You know, they haven't in these other countries when they're. It's almost like a lot of these other nations are learning the lessons from the mistakes of the United States. Look at Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union. I guess I've actually heard this argued that the fact that they were they were rich in agricultural commodities and a net exporter, that they were able to prolong the suffering of communism through the Soviet Union,
Hmm.
because out of sheer incompetence, they would have collapsed on themselves. But they
Yeah.
had to like
Well, they
build
did the same
themselves
thing.
back.
They did the same thing any government does, which is kick the can down the road. That's the one thing governments are good at.
Well, that's centralized authority. That's when you
Yeah.
have that
Yeah.
consolidated
You're
central
right.
planned
Absolutely right.
state.
But it's like the only thing that a government is competent at doing, a centralized authority is competent at doing, is kicking the can down the road. So the
Yeah.
Soviet Union kind of proves that, because
Mhm.
they really should have collapsed in the 70s. Okay, let's be real. 70s. When did Brezhnev? Brezhnev was 70s, right? 60s and 70s. So, mhm.
Yep. Khrushchev
um,
and yeah.
so never has sanctions actually achieved the goal, whatever the stated goal was. Oh, we want the people to rise up against Saddam Hussein, at Khomeini. Uh,
Yeah.
rem- in North Korea, the people were eating grass. They were eating grass, and who did it? Did they topple the
They wanted
dictator
them
of
to,
North Korea? No,
yeah,
they ate
topple their own
grass.
government. That's what we
They
wanted.
didn't though,
We
did
think
they?
that people will do our bidding. Just like right now, the Russians fucking can't stand us. That's what I was talking about. The middle class that were
Of
like
course not.
enamored by
Why
Western
should
culture
they?
and everything.
If I
They
was
see how much we
Russia,
hate them. That's the thing. All this Russophobia, all
if
this
I was
fucking
Russia, I would
ethnocentrism.
hate America too. If I was Russia, I mean,
People, yeah,
I'm American and I'm very disgusted with America.
I know.
I'll never hate America. But
Americans, they just
well, let
think
me
that we're gonna point our finger at Russians and then they'll condemn Putin and
I'm
then
just
problem solved.
disgusted.
Like, what are these people thinking?
I'm disgusted with our government. Let's just put it that way. I'll never be. Well, as far as I'm concerned, Florida secedes. We become the Republic of Florida, and I say fuck America. And then from there, we can secede Palm Beach County from Florida.
I love
and then
the
from there,
decentralization
from
rabbit
there,
hole.
I'm gonna secede my house from Palm Beach County
Yeah,
with a big
local
black
autonomy.
flag. That's what it'll be. But as far, I mean, look. I mean, I don't want America to fail. Trust me, but it seems like it's failing. It seems like the experiment is failing, and then like you just said, the government eventually, the politicians run for the hills. The government bureaucrats take what's left and run for the hills, and then we decentralize, and that's probably
Yeah,
what's going to happen.
They have holdings in Russia and China and the Eastern Bloc, for crying out loud,
Mm-hmm.
and they know it's a sinking ship.
Mm-hmm.
Watch how
Some
many
of them do.
conflicts of interest come out after this. How many
Well,
politicians were holding rubles
a lot of the
against
cogs, a lot
getting.
of the go ahead.
Well, no, because the ruble is back to where it was before the sanctions started,
A lot of the
and
government work. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, no, no.
There was a lag.
And
There was a
they're
lag.
rich in commodities. Also, they can dictate the price of goods and services. Well, of
Well,
goods of exports right now, and Europe has to pay the price for it. There's no demand,
see,
so for them to produce more, they can control the prices. So.
commodity. See, it's like what the Austrian economics way to look at anything is commodities. That's real wealth. That's real wealth. Going into debt and making more money out of money you owe to somebody, that is
Yeah,
not
this
real wealth.
modern monetary system.
Well, it's not even modern
Yeah.
monetary. It's not. Well, you're thinking about modern monetary theory. What we're
Policy,
doing is
yeah.
not. It's not really modern monetary theory. What we're doing, it's a scam. It's it's a financialized economy. Is all about making money out of thin air through financial
Yeah,
scams.
leveraging
Modern
it out through
monetary
that.
theory. Modern monetary theory is more like the government can print as much money as it wants, and that way they can help people. Right, which is the most ridiculous argument. The reason people like modern monetary theory is because they know that it would give the government, if it was to work, if it actually worked, which it would never will, because we've already tried it on the world. Soviet Union tried it, didn't work in
Yeah.
Soviet Union. Zimbabwe tried it, didn't work.
Decentralization.
Yeah, no, Soviet Union had modern monetary theory. They had ruples. They printed the rubles willy nilly whenever they needed them. They had a kind of a closed system, but they did trade in the world. But they had modern monetary theory in the Soviet Union. Literally, what they had was modern monetary theory. But people that are proponents of it, these are mostly government worshiping shills that they know that if we can get modern monetary theory to work, that would mean infinite power for the
Oh God,
government.
yeah. Like, oh, it just
The
hasn't been
government would be
implemented
able to,
right. We can do it right this time. That
that
sounds so
means that the
familiar.
government would be able to control everything under the sun because infinite money. That's
Yeah.
why. That's
And it
why
would
our
have
beer.
to. That's the thing. They would have to be able. They would have to seize every type of revenue from people. They would have to be able to have control over it at least too, because there couldn't be any alternative. They would have to have absolute control because if there's
Yeah,
competition, the whole thing
yeah.
would fall apart.
Oh yeah. So any competition would be ruthlessly. But the reason it would never work is because, like in the Soviet Union, black markets would spring up. Whenever you
Yeah.
have government
Parallel
regulation,
economies.
you'll have parallel economies. So yeah. So what's happening to the United States is the United States is fighting an economic war of attrition. The United States and a few countries in Europe, uh, and some are more into these sanctions than others. The United States kind of like backed off on a lot of the sanctions
Quietly,
quietly,
yeah. You notice we're
but
quietly backing away from a lot. I don't know if we have time to get into this, but did you see
quickly.
Biden the other day? Oh my God. He was like a feeble old man walking around confused while press were feigning over Obama and even Kamala. And it just, they were throwing little jokes. Obama was kind of dissing him here and there about that he was, I think he's coming out of the shadows to show that maybe he's been kind of pulling the strings and they've had enough
No,
with Biden.
he
Maybe
hasn't.
it's
He hasn't been. Well, I agree with what the
like right
Duran
until
was.
right now. Yeah.
Well, the Duran was talking about it today, and I kind of had this feeling from the beginning is that he's coming out of the shadow. He wasn't really pulling the strings. Now this is the signal he's going to
That
start
Biden's
pulling the
going down.
strings. Well, yeah, Biden's going to be a
Yeah.
scapegoat. He's going to be a
Right.
scapegoat,
Yeah.
just
You
like
heard that too, where they were saying that Hillary's under indictment, Obama or Biden's son under indictment. He's implicated. Now that the laptop has been admitted into Congress, right? It wasn't. It was submitted, but then it was accepted
entered
as a
into the
record, right?
record. And
Yeah.
why?
So
And
it's congressional
Nadler,
record. Yeah,
Nadler,
Terry Nadler and Matt Gaetz.
Nadler put on a token resistance. He was acting like he didn't want to, but he actually, I think it was he was acting like he didn't, he had an issue with admitting the laptop into the record, but you could tell it was pre rehearsed. The whole idea was, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
pretend I don't want to bring it into the record, and then we're going to bring it into the record.
Yeah.
That's what the whole thing was. But
Yeah, this was interesting. I did end up here. I ended up hearing this on the Duran this morning, how they were saying that Biden's going to be thrown under the bus, that the way that it looks like what they're signaling to, and Obama's going to try to rein in Kamala because she doesn't have independent support on her own, so she can be controlled and handled. And now that like the Clinton Knights are kind of falling, the Biden, I don't know if this would be, because he was handling Ukraine back, from 2008 to 2016. So Victoria Nuland and Jake Sullivan and these types that were in the State Department. I don't know if this, maybe that was, it's hard to tell what falls under Hillary's
but you know what?
control and Biden's control, but it almost seems like, I mean, Obama, when he had the spy apparatus, the Spygate, AP spying scandal, Fast and Furious, he was kind of, a little shifty here and there, but he didn't mess with foreign policy a lot, right? That was like Clinton or the Bidens, their own little factions within the government. I don't
Yeah,
know.
well,
It seems
no,
like they're
they're
at
they're
odds with each other sometimes, and they're in concert at other times. But it seems like Obama is like what they were saying, and it makes sense that Obama is claiming the reins for the Democratic Party. If Kamala is going to be his proxy, or if they're going to insert a VP, but we make a lot of bold predictions, so that's. I think they're gonna remove Biden from office within the next
Well,
month or so? What do you?
I'm up to $1,000 on predicted. I put in so far that Biden's not going to make it through his first term, and I
Yeah,
bought the
I would
first.
think
I
so.
bought the first was at 10 cents a share. I bought the first 200 $200 worth back in
Yeah,
2021. But if I win this, you're talking like $10,000 $15,000 if I win this. So
and
hey, that's a good one. It's the biggest bet I've
that's a
ever
good
made.
bet. With the
Uh,
writing on the wall, like we're saying, they're starting to walk back some of these sanctions, and then maybe if Kamala would say, "Listen, this was all Biden. Look, we impeached him," or if he resigns or something, if very scandalous, because now they wouldn't talk about the laptop during the 2020 election. They removed it. They banned it from social media. You couldn't even mention it. Um, so now
I'm
all of a
listening.
sudden it's like the New York Times verifies it, and then they're rolling it out now. It seems like an opportune moment.
Well, yeah, that's what a lot of people are saying.
He's
But
the
here's
fall
what I
guy.
think. Here's one prediction. I'm gonna. Here's my contrarian prediction.
That's better than a false flag, though. So yes, I'm going to go with that bet. Take off the false
Well,
flag off the table and say they're
these
going to
people,
quietly start to walk back.
these people are not crazy enough to have lost their, instinct of self-preservation yet. So I don't think we're
Yeah,
gonna see an escalation in the in Well, in the there is always a possibility, because see, that's the thing about history. What history teaches us is, a lot of human behavior is predictable, but at sometimes there are wild cards in history. Like Hitler was a wild card in history, So there's wild cards that come in that destroy the machine. A wrench gets thrown into the machine, so there's always that. But so I don't know what my point there was, but my point now is, my prediction is this: is that Obama thinks he's going to come in and bring everything under his control, and it's going to be like 2012 all over again. And first of all, the problem he's going to run into is the economy's not going to cooperate with him. The second thing, he's going to come and he's going to be in control. He's going to be de facto president at some point. But the economy's not going to cooperate. The dollar is going to the petrodollar, like we just said. Well, we've been talking about. It's over. That's the end of the petrodollar being the world's reserve currency. It may take some time, 5-10 years,
sure.
maybe, but maybe less. It could happen quickly. But the second thing is, all of these agencies, they've enjoyed a lot of freedom over the past 2 years. State
Oh
Department,
yeah, they're not going to be
CIA.
reined back in.
No, they've gone rogue, and
That's
there's
why
going to
they're
be
warring. They're
no.
at odds. They've gone rogue, like
Yeah,
you say, and
they've gone
they're
rogue.
competing with each other.
There's no way Obama can bring the CIA under control, because the
Right? Could he
CIA.
ever though? I mean,
Not
does
really,
it
but they respected him enough while he was president
to
to
work in his
help
favor?
him. Yeah, but if he, we'll see. We'll see how it
Yeah.
goes. I think it might end up being more the CIA, especially in State Department, which they're the same agency. Uh, they will do more controlling the foreign policy more than Obama will. I think that they won't respect, like in
Well, I mean,
2014.
was Obama really for starting war in Somalia and Yemen? And
Yes, he didn't care. He didn't care. He's a
yeah,
politician, but
he was complicit. I was thinking that's not his
he
agenda
did
because these
care. What
nations were on the
Obama
chopping block back from like the
what
early 2000s.
what Obama cared about more than anything else, and what he's always cared about, is his
His
image.
legacy.
His
Yeah.
image. How people see him. So once it came to light that we were helping the Nazis in Ukraine, then Obama said, "Oh, we're going to stop sending the weapons to Ukraine."
Mhm.
But they were sending weapons to the Nazis in Ukraine for a year or
Yeah,
two before
they're
that.
so bold about this too.
Right.
Yeah, they
So
just
once
Zelensky just brought in a couple Nazis into the Greek parliament
on
for
the
crying
Greek
out loud.
Parliament, it's
Yeah, I was
crazy
like,
because he's being controlled by them. Obviously,
mhm.
he's being completely controlled by the
Yeah, his
right
own
wing
forces are
the right wing
neo-Nazi.
extremists. Just the right wing, not necessarily
Because there's five
fascist,
other
but
factions.
yeah. There's some more extreme than others, but they're very brutal and they know how to intimidate people. And they have a lot of what they did was they got themselves inserted into law enforcement. They concentrated in the elections on getting in law enforcement, getting on prosecutor
Getting
slots, just
institutional power.
Yeah, it's like Soros did with the prosecutors here.
Yeah.
That's what they did in
Well,
Ukraine.
there's NGOs backing them as well. I mean, also Soros,
So,
among.
so that's my bold prediction is that Obama. I think I agree with the assessment that Obama's going to come back. He'll he'll take Kamala Harris under his
Come
wing.
back into the limelight. Yeah.
Well, he'll be the de facto. He's going to be the head of the party, just like Hillary Clinton was the head of the party for a while. So there's always like a head of, just like Trump is the head of the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Nothing happens in the Republican Party much anymore. There's always a few outliers like Romney and those people. They're all going to be gone. Murkowski's going to be gone this election. Liz Cheney's going to be gone.
Get all the fucking neocons out too. That's one
They're
thing.
gone. The only one that we can't get rid of is fucking Marco Rubio, fucking Lindsey Graham. Those two are going to be persistent.
They're entrenched. Huh?
Marco Rubio knows how to fucking talk out of both sides of his mouth. That's for sure. And then the guy here, Brian Mast, he's a fucking neocon too. The motherfucker. He's the one with no legs. He's the one.
Is he getting called out for it?
No,
like
not yet.
Taylor Greene was buying war stocks, and then her populace, her MAGA supporters, people that propped her up, were like condemning her and calling her out and being like, "Hey,
it was probably
you're not going to be a neocon. We'll get your ass right out of there."
Yeah.
She changed her tune. She apologized. So.
Well, who knows if she
America First candidates, there is some accountability too.
I
believe this.
I'm never one to defend a politician, but who knows? It's like any of these public figures that get caught doing shady investments. You never know.
Surprised that only rang the first time. No.
Yeah, you never know if they're actually buying the stocks or if it's an ETF or if it's a financial advisor. But I'm not one to defend politicians.
Yeah, their political opposition is going to come out and make a bold statement like that.
Yeah, I don't really give a fuck that much about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I got her on Gab. She's on Gab. She seems like she means well for the most part, but yeah, there's whatever. I don't care about any of these politicians enough to really defend them. But it is true that like it could be like a portfolio that someone else is managing. There's always that.
Yeah, like
but yeah. So I think that's what's going to happen is I think that these agencies, especially the really powerful ones, the DOJ is very powerful. Well, the NSA kind of, I don't know enough about it, but I know the DOJ would be...
that with Obama anyways. They're like, yay, our guy is back. All right.
Right.
We already got the place rigged for
but
you.
That's
we
not
got
their
7,000 new cameras.
Right.
And microphones already all over, boss.
I think that we're going to have some problems with these agencies, A, and B. The economy is not going to cooperate. They're not going to be able to lie their way out of it, out of how bad the economy is going to be. So even if Obama takes over, it's not going to be 2013, 2014.
I mean,
right. It's going to damage the Democrat Party somewhat, but it will. You'd be surprised. I think if Obama assumes leadership, you'd be surprised how quickly the flock will return to the shepherd on that one because they adore Obama.
I know. I was gonna say it's almost like they've already given up on the midterms, and if they're actually, God forbid, capable of self-reflection and regrouping at least, but no, they're gonna get the whole whole fish to swerve quickly in a
Obama's gonna maybe he's yearning for some nostalgia, and he's gonna be disappointed because it's not gonna go like that. But I think we're getting close to the end here. What time are we at? Because we gotta keep it at like an hour. It's like an hour and 15 now. So we're at an hour and 17. So let's call it quits for now.
Yep.
I don't even know what to call this, what the title should be on this one. Because what did we talk about? We started with sanctions.
Yeah, sanctions.
Then we went to a whole financial system overview. Then we went back to sanctions, then Biden. So that's what I'm going to call it. Sanctions, financial system, Biden. There you go.
Make sure you do it in red letters and white letters, and the occasional, just like Tim Pool does it, shocking, God.
Oh
sanctions.
my God, no. Oh my God.
No.
Fucking
we're not gonna compete
clickbaiter. Such a clickbaiter. World War III is coming. Yeah. All right. So it's a pleasure. Actually, this is a lot of fun. It was more like an organic sort of just normal conversation. So I think it'll be great. So All right, I have to probably go to the
Excellent.
gym in a
I look
minute.
forward
I'm
to
gonna
seeing it.
stop. Yeah, I'm gonna stop this video, start uploading it right away onto YouTube, then put it on the other two
Nice.
platforms, and then go to the gym. So
Nice chatting with
pleasure.
you.
I'm glad the internet worked. Have a good night.
You too.
All right.
Have a good night. Bye.
All right.